All right, so get this. You sent in this audiobook excerpt about entrepreneurship, and it's really fascinating. The Stanford professor's got like a seriously unique approach.
Yeah, it is kind of different.
It's not your typical business school case study for sure.
Definitely not. It's more like a real challenge, you know?
Yeah.
Like he throws his students right in the deep end.
Okay, I like that. The deep end.
He gives them super limited resources.
Yeah.
Like just $5 in 2 hours.
Only 2 hours.
And tells them to go make as much money as possible.
2 hours. That sounds a lot like a typical business school case study to me.
You'd think so, but the 2-hour time limit really changes things.
Yeah, I can see that. But okay, I have to ask, what did the students actually come up with?
Well, that's what's so interesting. They didn't just try to, make a few extra bucks.
Right.
They actually used it as a chance to really develop, a core entrepreneurial mindset.
So less about the money, more about the approach.
Exactly. It's about that ability to identify problems and then use limited resources creatively to come up with solutions.
I like that problem solving. So tell me more about what they did.
Okay, so one group, they noticed that people just hate waiting in long lines at popular restaurants.
Don't I know it?
Right, so they booked reservations ahead of time and then sold their spots to people who were, impatient and didn't want to wait.
That's brilliant. Simple, but so smart.
Right. They realized time is money, literally in this case.
Yeah, for sure. Did they have any other observations from that little experiment?
Yeah, actually. They noticed that, female students were way more successful at selling the reservations.
Interesting. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. Maybe they were better negotiators, or maybe people just felt more comfortable approaching them. Who knows?
Yeah, it's true. I'd probably be more likely to buy a reservation from a friendly college student than some random guy scalping tickets,
For sure.
Yeah.
And another thing they noticed, restaurants that use those vibrating pager systems, they tended to have higher sales. Yeah. It's like they accidentally stumbled onto these key insights about human behavior and how we perceive value.
I have definitely felt that pager-induced impatience myself. It's like that little device just makes the wait feel so much longer.
It totally does.
So what other approaches did the students take?
Okay, so another group set up a free bike tire pressure check station.
Okay.
And then if your tires needed air, they would inflate them for $1.
Interesting. So they kind of started with a free service to draw people in and then offered the real value add.
Exactly. They weren't just solving a problem. They were doing it in a way that tapped into people's psychology.
For sure. Psychology is a big part of good marketing.
It totally is. And get this, their revenue actually went up when they switched from a fixed price to a donation-based model.
Wait, what, for the air?
Yeah, for the air. You'd think people would try to get away with paying as little as possible.
Yeah, you'd think.
But it actually worked better when they just asked for donations.
Wow, that's counterintuitive. Why do you think that shift works so well?
Well, there are a few things going on there. I think framing it as a donation introduces an element of choice. It doesn't feel as transactional. It's more like you're contributing to a good cause.
I guess so.
And people often respond more positively when they feel like they have some control over the situation.
Yeah.
you know.
That makes sense.
And then there's also the idea of anchoring. Like starting with the free pressure check kind of sets a baseline. So then that dollar for inflation seems like a really small additional cost.
It does, right? So they're subtly guiding people towards a specific price point.
Yeah, without being pushy about it.
Clever. So, okay, but you said you had a favorite example earlier.
Oh, yeah, I do. This one group decided their most valuable asset wasn't the $5.
What was it?
It was their 3-minute presentation slot to the class.
Wow.
They sold it to a company that was looking to recruit students.
No way. That's incredible.
Right. Talk about recognizing an unconventional asset.
Wow. Instead of getting stuck on the limitations, they just saw a different opportunity.
Exactly. And it basically created like a hyper-targeted commercial for their audience.
That's brilliant. Okay, so did the professor come up with any other creative twists on this challenge?
He did. Instead of $5, he gave some students 10 paperclips.
10 paperclips. What were they supposed to do with that?
Maximize value. Not necessarily just money.
Okay, so how did the students tackle that one?
Well, they were actually inspired by this guy, Kyle McDonald. You know him. He's the one who famously traded a single red paperclip up to a house.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
It's amazing what you can achieve with just some creativity and persistence. So did any of the students try something similar?
Some did.
Yeah.
One group decided to go for sheer quantity. Like their goal was to build the world's longest paperclip chain.
The longest paperclip chain.
Wow. They got their friends involved. They even got some local businesses to donate paperclips. I can only imagine how many paperclips they ended up with.
That's dedication for sure. That's less about the paperclips themselves and more about just like the commitment and energy they poured into it. What about other groups? Any more unconventional approaches?
Oh, definitely. One team made this hilarious prank video. It was like a staged dorm room heist where they used paperclips to pick locks.
Seriously, they pick locks with paperclips. I've got to see that.
They got a ton of views online.
Yeah.
Turned those humble paperclips into like viral fame.
That's hilarious. I guess they understood the value of entertainment and like capturing people's attention in our digital world. Does any of the groups go for a more practical approach?
Absolutely. There was one group that set up a Stanford students' flea market stall.
Okay.
And they used their paperclips to barter for services.
Interesting. So like what kind of services?
All kinds of stuff.
Right.
Running errands, carrying bags, even offering brainstorming sessions. It was like a one-stop shop for problem solving powered by paperclips.
That's really cool. So
Yeah.
they turned themselves into like a valuable resource. I like that.
Right. It shows that sometimes your most valuable asset is really just your own skill set and willingness to help others.
So true. And you know what's fascinating is that all of these projects, whether they were aimed at profit or world record or even just, a good laugh, they all taught those students really valuable lessons about problem solving.
That's the key takeaway for sure.
Like they learned that opportunities are everywhere. You just have to like train your mind to see them.
Yeah, you got to look beyond the obvious.
It's about shifting from that can't be done mindset to a more like, how can I make this work attitude?
Right. It's all about being resourceful.
And sometimes the most like seemingly small challenges can actually be the perfect training ground for tackling those like bigger real world issues.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
One of the most interesting points this professor makes is about the contrast between the rules of academia and the realities of the world outside the classroom.
Oh, yeah. What do you mean? Isn't a good education supposed to like prepare you for the real world?
In theory, yeah. But he argues that in school, success is often measured individually.
Okay.
You're competing against your classmates for grades.
I see.
And there's a clear winner and loser.
Right.
But in the real world, it's more about collaboration and shared goals.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah,
So it's less about proving you're better than everyone else and more about working together toward a common goal.
exactly. It's about teamwork.
Are there any other key differences that he points out?
Well, he talked about how in school learning is often very passive. You're told what to study, how to think, what the right answers are. But in the real world, it's more like an open book test.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
You have to constantly be seeking out the knowledge and resources you need to solve problems.
That's a great point. It's like you're suddenly in charge of your own education.
It is.
Yeah.
And you have to be proactive about finding the information that you need.
It can be pretty daunting at times.
It can, but it's also really empowering. You're
Yeah.
not limited by what someone else decides you should learn.
That's true. And another important point he makes is about embracing failure.
Oh, yeah. That's
Yeah.
a big one.
In school, failure is often seen as like something to be avoided at all costs.
You're taught to fear it.
Right. But in the real world, just like in evolution, failure is an essential part of learning and growth.
It's how we get better. We make mistakes, we learn from them, and we move forward.
It's about seeing those mistakes not as setbacks, but as opportunities to improve. Does he give any specific examples of this in action?
He does. He tells this funny story about a student from South Korea who emailed him about an unfair multiple-choice question on a test.
Really? On a test about this very audiobook?
Yep. The student was being tested on the professor's own material and thought the question was totally unfair.
Wow. How is that even possible?
Well, the student argued that the question just didn't accurately reflect the nuances of the professor's ideas.
So it was like too simplified.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that a simple multiple-choice format couldn't capture the complexity of the topic.
That's really interesting. It's like the student was challenging the limitations of standardized testing itself. What was the professor's response?
He used the anecdote to highlight the limitations of standardized testing and the danger of assuming that everything of value can be easily measured. Some things like creativity, resilience, empathy, they just can't be quantified on a test.
That's so true. It's a good reminder that the real world doesn't come with a neat answer key.
Right, we're constantly navigating ambiguous situations and making judgment calls based on incomplete information.
Exactly. And that's where those entrepreneurial skills like adaptability and creative problem solving become so crucial.
For sure. The professor emphasizes that entrepreneurship isn't just about starting a business. It's a mindset.
A way of approaching challenges.
Exactly. And seeing opportunities where others might see roadblocks.
So it's about being a proactive problem solver, whether you're leading a team or launching a project or even just figuring out how to fix a leaky faucet.
It's about that can-do spirit.
Yeah. You know, I remember he mentioned something about T-shaped individuals. What did he mean by that?
He was talking about the idea that to be really effective in today's world, you need a combination of deep expertise in one area.
Okay, so like a specialist.
Yeah, that's the vertical stroke of the T. But you also need a broad understanding of other disciplines and fields. That's the horizontal stroke.
So like a specialist and a generalist.
Exactly. T-shaped individuals can bridge those gaps between different disciplines. They foster communication and innovation.
I can see how that would be super valuable, especially in like a team setting.
Yeah, it brings diverse perspectives to the table.
Yeah.
And the professor has actually been involved with some really interesting programs at Stanford that encourage this kind of interdisciplinary thinking.
Oh, cool. Like what?
Well, he mentioned the Stanford Technology Ventures program,
Okay.
and it focuses on teaching engineers and scientists about entrepreneurship.
So it's about giving those brilliant minds the tools to not only develop those like groundbreaking technologies, but also to like bring those innovations to the world in a meaningful way.
Yeah, it's about empowering them to become entrepreneurial leaders.
Regardless of their specific career path.
Right. And they also highlight the importance of understanding the needs of the market and developing solutions that actually solve real-world problems.
Which brings us right back to that core entrepreneurial mindset, identifying problems and finding creative solutions. So it sounds like this professor really emphasizes hands-on learning, you know, like stepping outside of the traditional classroom.
Oh, totally. He's a big believer in experiential learning.
Yeah. Did he talk about any other programs at Stanford that kind of embody this approach?
He did. He talked about the D School.
The D School. Okay. What's that?
It stands for like the Hasso-Plattner Institute of Design at Stanford.
Oh, okay. So it's a design school.
Yeah. But it's not your typical design school. It's a place where students from all different disciplines can come together.
Oh, wow.
To collaborate on real-world design challenges.
Interesting. I've heard of the D School. They're known for tackling some pretty complex issues, right?
Oh, yeah. They work on everything from designing for affordability and accessibility to creating social movements and addressing global health issues.
That's amazing. So it's not just about aesthetics. It's about solving real problems.
Exactly. It's about using design thinking to make a positive impact on the world.
It sounds like a real breeding ground for innovation. And it's cool how the professor kind of draws from his own experiences, not just as an academic, but also as a researcher, an entrepreneur, a consultant, a writer, you know, to inform his teaching.
Yeah, he's not just talking the talk. He brings in real-world examples and stories, both successes and failures.
That's so important.
Yeah, it gives students a more complete picture of what it really takes to succeed.
I mean, it's one thing to learn about these concepts in theory, right?
Totally.
But it's so much more powerful to hear about them in action, especially from someone who's actually been there.
Right. It makes it feel more attainable.
Yeah, exactly. So does he talk about any of his own failures? Like, what did he learn from them?
Oh, yeah. He shares some great stories about his own missteps and what he learned from them. He emphasizes that failure is just part of the process.
It's about how you bounce back from those failures, right?
Exactly. And he also incorporates the stories and insights of other successful people from different fields, too, like artists, inventors, academics.
So he's showing that these principles can be applied across different domains. It's not just about business.
Right. It's a mindset. It's a way of approaching the world.
And it's inspiring to hear how others have, like, overcome challenges and achieved success in their own unique ways.
Yeah. It's all about finding your own path.
But, okay, let's get back to those differences between academia and the real world. What other points did you find interesting?
Well, he made this really interesting observation about how in school we're often conditioned to compete, to strive for individual achievement.
Right. Like it's all about getting the best grades.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in the real world, collaboration, teamwork, shared success, those are often way more important.
Right. That's a really important distinction. I think a lot of people struggle with that transition, moving from that me versus them mentality to a more collaborative approach.
It's a big shift.
It requires a real change in perspective.
It does. And he also talked about how in school learning is often very passive.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier, right?
We did. But it's worth repeating. You know, in school, we're told what to study, how to think what the right answers are.
Right. But in the real world, it's like we've said, it's more like an open book test.
Exactly. You have to be constantly learning, adapting, figuring things out as you go.
Which can be pretty daunting.
It can. but it's also incredibly liberating.
I agree. There's no single authority figure with all the answers.
Nope. You have to become your own teacher.
And embrace the inevitable failures along the way.
Oh yeah, failure is part of the journey.
I really appreciate how he reframed failure as a necessary part of the process.
It's not something to be feared. It's something to be learned from.
Exactly. And you know, that student who challenged the multiple choice question, it really highlights the limits of trying to measure everything, doesn't it?
It totally does.
Yeah.
How can a multiple choice question possibly capture the complexity of, like, creative problem solving or critical thinking or emotional intelligence?
Right. Some things just can't be quantified.
Exactly. And the professor actually shared this great quote by Albert Einstein: "Not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts."
I love that quote.
It's a great reminder to look beyond the metrics and really value those qualities that truly matter.
Like curiosity, empathy, resilience, those things that make us human.
Exactly. It's about being a lifelong learner, embracing challenges, making a difference in the world.
And you know what's amazing? This whole conversation started with a simple challenge. Make as much money as possible with $5 in 2 hours. But it's turned into something so much deeper.
It really has.
It's an exploration of what it means to be an entrepreneur, not just in the business world, but in all aspects of life.
It's about embracing that mindset of possibility, seeing opportunities where others see limitations, and recognizing that we all have the potential to be problem solvers, innovators, change makers.
I love that. So to all our deep divers out there, what walls are you going to break through?
What doors are you going to open?
What impossible challenges are you going to turn into opportunities?
We can't wait to hear about all the amazing things you accomplish.
Keep diving, keep exploring, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.